Mountaineers are struggling, but we got to have fun with it somehow. This is the weekly episode of Over or Unders for the West Virginia matchup with the TCU Horned Frogs coming up on Saturday. We've got you covered here on Mountaineer Moment. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. Hey man, make no mistake about it. West Virginia is struggling. It's brutal. It's been hard. It feels like the longest season ever, and there's still 5 games to go. But they got another shot, another crack at it to get their first Big 12 win this Saturday when TCU comes to visit Morgantown for their first visit since 2022 on October 25th, Saturday at 6 o'clock in the official Coal Rush game for the Mountaineers' second annual time doing that. Last year, even though it was a loss to Iowa State, really great atmosphere, obviously electric, and fans bought into it. It was really cool to see them, recognize the coal miners and the coal mining industry in the great state of West Virginia, and looking forward to more of that at the very least on Saturday, whether or not it results in a win or another blowout or this or that. At least we get to put that on for the state, so pretty cool there. But as I said in the intro, this is our official over or unders for the matchup with TCU. If you've been here any amount of time, you know that we've done that every game throughout this season for the Mountaineers. We're going to continue to do that. So just a few different kind of fun little stats, numbers to watch for throughout the game. We're not doing over-unders and betting on like the lines of the game, the spread and all that, but just some other numbers to keep an eye on and for you to play along, throughout this episode and then keep track of them on Saturday when the game's going on, over-unders for certain players and stats. So that's what this episode is. Again, we've done it throughout the course of this podcast. So this is episode number 53 of Mountaineer Moment, and just super stoked to be just plugging away at this thing. And started right at the beginning of football season, if you didn't know that. But my name's Troy, and it's a privilege to have you here. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for making it that far. I hope you'll stick around and would consider just leaving a comment, liking the video, subscribing, because that helps me a ton, and it helps you too to know when we have new content coming. And we have several different episodes that come out throughout the week, so this is one of them. The most recent one that we did relating to the football team was Behind Enemy Lines, which is just a breakdown of TCU and some other numbers and things to look for them and what they bring to the table, how they've gotten to this point in the season, and some things to look for. Keep an eye on Saturday. This, again, over-unders. We've got one dedicated to just different storylines to keep an eye on as you count down to kickoff. And then, of course, post-game, we have several different episodes talking about what went wrong. I was going to say what went right, but there's not much of that lately, but a lot of what went wrong, breaking down the Mountaineer game, that same day, same evening. So you can look forward to one of those coming up on Saturday night. Post-game, of course, we'll be here on Mountaineer Moment. Ramping things up with basketball. Again, I feel like I'm kind of giving a history lesson of the podcast here, but on Mountaineer Moment, we are ramping things up with basketball. Several different episodes coming your way as we're less than 2 weeks from the official tip-off for the Ross Hodge era in Morgantown. So super stoked about that. Super promising team that we've got this year, and I know we're all looking forward to that. If you're a fan of both programs and you see the football program struggling, basketball is right around the corner, and there's a reason to be optimistic and hopeful about the year that they're having. All right, so with this over or unders for TC, we're not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to give you 3 numbers, 3 stats, and all of which are based on facts and different stats throughout throughout the course of the season, whether it's for the Mountaineers or for TCU. So the first one, as depressing as it sounds, I think it's a decently fair line, and we're setting the line at passing yards for West Virginia quarterbacks at 99.5. Comical, I know. Who would have ever thought you'd be doing that? But I'm going to give you why I'm doing that line. 99.5 total passing yards for West Virginia quarterbacks. And I know I mentioned that this one is fun, this kind of episode. This one's not particularly fun for us as West Virginia fans, but I'm going to give you some context to that 99.5. And obviously the question is, will the West Virginia quarterbacks combined, will all of them combine for more than 100 yards? Will they hit triple digits? So The last 3 games, Utah, BYU, UCF for West Virginia, their leading passer has failed to reach the 100-yard mark through the air. He hasn't done it, whether it's been Khalil or Scotty Fox, or Jalen Henderson, obviously getting the start against Utah. The leading passer in these games has failed to reach 100 yards, and that's pretty wild to say. The only time that the team eclipsed 100 yards total was against BYU when Khalil Wilkins and Scotty Fox combined to throw for 135 yards, in that one. West Virginia, just so you know, if you didn't know, they do rank last in the Big 12 in passing yards per game, right? If that wasn't any indication yet, there's the fact there. And then they've only thrown 4 passing touchdowns all season, which has them tied for last in the Big 12 with Oklahoma State, another team that is reeling and struggling and really, really, really having a bad season there. But little facts about TCU and what they bring to the table defensively as to why that number might be at 99.5. Again, for combined passing yards, West Virginia's only done it once over the last 3 games. And to me, they haven't done, and you're going to obviously kind of give a hint toward where I'm leaning in this line, over or under, but to me, this team through the last 3 games, through the last 4 games, since you've entered into Big 12 play, since you've lost Nico, since you've gone predominantly to these freshman quarterbacks, and now the rumor is that Khalil Wilkins is a little banged up. Does that mean we see Max Brown or Scotty Fox? Like, what is that going to lend to? But anyway, there's just been, simply put, there's been really no indication of this getting better. So, that's why the line's appropriate, because they haven't proven anything, right? You come out here and pass for 275 yards. Yeah, that line's going to be a little different next week, but we're not seeing any indication of that whatsoever. And there's these young quarterbacks. And then, again, TCU, where it kind of gets a little interesting based on what they're doing throughout their season. They've got some good playmakers on defense. They have a safety that's has 4 interceptions on the season, which is just one off the nation's lead. But they are giving up the 2nd most passing yards per game across the Big 12, across the entire season. TCU coming into this game, if you don't know it, 5-2, 2-2 overall, or 2-2 in conference play, and they're giving up some passing yards. They've been on a seesaw. We talked about that in the Behind Enemy Lines episode. They started Big 12 play with the loss, then a win, then a loss, then a win. Hopefully that means they're due for a loss against West Virginia. But I think almost like innocent until proven guilty. We gotta take the under for this line until they prove that they can do anything else, because it's been very, very bad. Certainly I would take the under even more emphatically if it was just, okay, West Virginia's leading passer, how much does he go for? The fact that it could be 2 or 3 quarterbacks out there and they might be able to reach 100 is obviously possible, right? Not asking for much, but I'd still take the under just for the sheer fact that they have just been struggling so tremendously, and there's no indication of any let-up in that department. Number 2, over or under, has to do with the TCU quarterback, Josh Hoover, and his completion percentage. We're setting the line for him at 70.5. So will his completion percentage be under or over 70.5? So it's no secret, obviously, West Virginia's defense has struggled immensely in conference play, and it's not just the guys up front. I talked about that as a part of the recap for the UCF game. This West Virginia back end and the secondary has taken a significant step back, especially over the last 3 games with the opposing quarterbacks mentioned again. Utah, BYU, and UCF. Obviously, the lone matchup we're kind of excluding in that is against Kansas, though they got ran off the field, and Dink Daniels threw 3 touchdowns, but he only completed 50% of his passes. What I'm noticing a trend of is the last 3 weeks is quarterbacks are just doing whatever they want to do. You have Jackson for UCF last week, who had a really pretty impressive game, and he was finding wide open receivers that allowed it to look easy, because it was easy. There were some easy completions out there. Freshman Bear Bachmeyer with BYU did his thing against this Mountaineer secondary, carving them up a little bit and with his legs. And then And then the kid from Utah, Devin Dampier, was like 21 for 26. So those numbers combined, West Virginia over the last 3 weeks, and here's an indication as to why the line is set at 70.5. So West Virginia is allowing starting quarterbacks the last 3 weeks, mentioned all three of them just a moment ago, to complete 73% of their passes. 73% of their passes. And again, it doesn't take much, or you don't have to be a expert, when it comes to football knowledge, to recognize that a lot of these passes that opposing quarterbacks are getting as of late over these last 3 weeks are wide open. Just wide open space, not a defender within 10 yards, and you're hitting a guy for big chunk plays. And we've seen that. I particularly saw that a few times with Jackson and UCF. And, they had some guys making, I think the kid that caught the first 2 touchdowns, both of which came on fourth down, he had just open. And he hadn't done much all season. Like, he hadn't done much even last season. If they pulled his numbers up and I think they pulled his numbers up and it was like he had, I don't know, a total guess here, so don't take my word for this, but after he caught those 2 touchdowns, it was like he had 2 catches for 65 yards and 2 touchdowns or whatever, and on the season to date he had like 74 yards or something like that. It was like, okay. He was finding openings against West Virginia. As my point there is that seems to be a trend as of late. 73% completion percentage over the last 3 weeks. And again, that's indicative of a West Virginia secondary that's really, really struggling. And now come the TCU Horned Frogs to Morgantown, Saturday night, Coal Rush game, all that fun stuff. Your own foreign conference play. You got a TCU team that's coming in off a win against Baylor. Because that was their seesaw, loss win. So they're coming off a win against Baylor, and Josh Hoover, who's obviously been at TCU a while now, he's completing 64% of his passes over the last 3 weeks. In that span, he also has thrown 10 touchdowns in 3 Big 12 games and 2 interceptions. Obviously, it's tough to predict exactly, kind of a completion percentage, kind of an interesting over/under to identify. But I think it's important because it's indicative, again, of the level of play that West Virginia's secondary is putting forth right now. And it's not a very high level, to put it very politely. It's not a very high level performance that we're seeing from the West Virginia secondary. So, I would take the over of 70.5% because over would be on par for what West Virginia is doing as of late. Again, if you haven't shown us anything otherwise, then why would we believe that it's going to be different? You can say that about every facet of the Mountaineer offense and defense to this point. If you haven't shown us anything otherwise, why would we believe that it's going to be different? And you could take the over here. And I think, again, Josh Hoover proven, he might be the best quarterback of the bunch that we've seen, to this point in the season. He's good, and he's got some good weapons. We talked about them on the Enemy Lines episode. If you want to go check that out. I think Josh Hoover himself has 21 touchdowns, 21 passing touchdowns this season. I'm just going to verify that real quick. Yeah, 21 touchdowns. He's tied in the Big 12 with Sawyer Robertson in that department. He's second in the Big 12 in passing yardage. So he's finding a way to get things done, and he's having a good season again for TCU. So I would take the over for his completion percentage. But keep an eye on that. Again, that's going to be, okay, if he's down around 50%, well, maybe that would mean that the West Virginia secondary is doing a better job of covering. But if he's, up over 70%, it might look similar to what we've seen recently. And again, I'm just kind of thinking about this right now. If you just kind of think about it, if a quarterback's completing 75% of his throws, we know that like 70, it's not like 73% of those are contested catches, right? 75% completion is a strong indicator that wide receivers are running free and wide open. So just be mindful of that and be aware of that as you watch this one. Last over-under we're going to get to, and it's not an over-under I've done quite in this regard with these two guys I'm going to talk about, but I have talked about these two guys and their need to get involved in the flow of the offense, and that's Rodney Gallagher III and Cam Vaughn, two receivers for this team. Rodney Gallagher, we know his deal. He's been here. One of the few players that we know that came back to be in Morgantown under the new coaching staff, and Cam Vaughn coming over from Jacksonville State with Rich Rodriguez. I'm putting a number out, and I'm going to tell you why again, like we have, but 9.5 touches combined for Rodney Gallagher and Cam Vaughn against TCU. Now, in a normal season, because this has been anything but, or maybe you can just say in a normal looking offense that's functional to some degree, which is not what we're seeing, 9.5 touches for your wide receivers 1 and 2 isn't a big ask. 9.5 touches, that's not a big ask. It's a pretty considerable ask because of how bad this offense has been this season. Let me tell you about it. So again, we've kind of been measuring things by the last 3 games for the Mountaineers. These two wideouts, Rodney Gallagher, Cam Vaughn, I'm going to give you a second to guess. How many touches do you think, including Rodney Gallagher runs, how many touches do you think those two guys have in these last 3 games? Utah, BYU, UCF, how many touches for Rodney Gallagher and Cam Vaughn combined, including end-arounds and all that sort of stuff? How many times have they touched the football? The answer over the last 3 games for 2 players, arguably your 2 best weapons at this point, were due to injuries and other things. 17 touches for these guys over the last 3 games. And you would call it going against the narrative, obviously, of what we've seen, because I've kind of stuck with the narrative in my last 2 predictions. But I think I'm just wanting to take the over because I want to see these guys get involved so desperately. So I'm going to take the over here. But again, that would be significantly more damage or more touches that they've gotten the previous 3 weeks. So 9.5, meaning they would get at least 10 touches. I just think at some point, now again, obviously we could be wrong because there's only 5 games left. But at some point, Rich Rod, the staff, the quarterbacks, just in sync with wideouts, and the offensive game plan and scheme is just going to work better because there's going to be adjustments, hopefully. That's something else we're going to talk about, more this week. But Coach Rod he's an offensive mastermind. He's known for what he's done offensively and guys he's had in his system. And again, it's not less receivers and more quarterbacks and run game, and I get that completely. But here are 2 guys that are pretty good, man. Like Rodney Gallagher hasn't exactly had the West Virginia. I'm trying to be careful how I say this. Hasn't had the West Virginia career that we thought he might. Coming in a couple years ago, right? He's a junior now, been here, played a little defense last year. That was a bad experiment. But when he's had the ball in his hands, he's made some plays. It's just this season when there was, you're thinking, he might have a breakout year. He might have, get more touches, get more involved in Rich Rod's offense, and we just haven't seen that happen. And again, that's due to a number of factors. One of which being this offensive line, one of which being the quarterback carousel, one of which being the fact that Jaheim White's gone, and so more eyes are on you now. One of which is the fact that, when defenses take away the run and they're getting to the quarterback, like there's only so much you can do. And Cam Vaughn, he's getting doubled. He's got lots of eyes on him everywhere he goes, and rightfully so. But you would think, that at some point, and I'm hoping it's going to be this week, I'm begging that it's going to be this week, Rich Rodriguez, that you get these guys touches, right? There are ways, I believe that there are ways that you can get these guys 10 plus touches and hit this over. I just do. I'm not going to sit here and say that each of these guys are going to have a couple catches, and that's going to be it. They're going to have 2 catches for 18 yards apiece, and that's it. I think there's a way to get these guys involved, and I think it happens this week. I'm hoping it happens this week, in other words, because I think Rodriguez obviously smart enough and knows what he's doing on the offense and the scheme and game plan and all of those fun things. But take the over, bet on Rich Rodriguez and say he's going to find a way to get these guys the ball with easy completions, easy touches, getting involved, running around in space and find a way to get him the ball. You just got to find a way to get him the ball, because if you don't, we're going to have a result that's been similar to what we've seen lately. These guys are so important to the offense, and they've been just haven't been there recently. And it's, I'm not even blaming them, blaming the system, blaming the coaching, blaming the offensive line play, and all of those factors, because we've seen it. Cam Vaughn's a stud, and he should have way more yards, way more catches, way more targets than he has right now. And Rodney Gallagher should have more touches, because these are the two guys you got. These guys are two things, right, individually. This is two things you got going for you. Two players you got working in your favor because they are talented. You got to find a way to give them the ball. Maybe I should title that the episode. You got to find. It's just, I've spent the most time on this one, but I'm annoyed by the fact they're not getting the ball. Got to get them the ball. There's got to be a way. There's got to be a way for your leading passer to go for over 100 yards. There's got to be a way. So this is over or under TCU edition. West Virginia set to do battle with them at 6 o'clock on the 25th. ESPN Plus, and we'll definitely have more content coming your way this week on the Mountaineer Moment as we count down to kickoff. Maybe, just maybe, a couple basketball episodes in there too. So be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, comment, leave your thoughts. That would be great. Leave your thoughts even on this over or under, these three things here. So we've got, just to recap for you, got over or under 99.5 passing yards for West Virginia quarterbacks, over or under Josh Hoover completing 70.5% of his passes, and then over or under combined touches for Rodney Gallagher and Cam Vaughn. That includes runs of 9.5. So leave your prediction in the comments, and we'll see you next time on Mountaineer Moment. Let's go Mountaineers.